Welcome to this tutorial for the default 787 in MSFS. This tutorial is from a runway start with engines on, and we've already planned a flight in the world map. A world map flight planning tutorial is linked in the description below, and there's a cold start tutorial for this plane on the end card. As for the video you're currently watching, please watch it before you fly, pause along the way, take notes, then fly from those notes. Okay, first of all on the flight deck, head down to the FMC. On the initialize page, first of all, we'll set our cruising altitude. We'll set that to 26,000 for the short flight ahead. You can now set a cost index. Lower number is more economical but slower. Double click 0 fuel weight to auto set the value for this. And for ease, we're going to set reserves to a nominal value, but if you're feeling hardcore, you can work that out with an external tool. It's a product of your takeoff weight and fuel consumption. We'll enter 15 for flaps because that's what the flaps are set to from a runway start. CG, you can just double click twice to auto populate and click the V-speed soft keys to populate your V-speed, then hit execute to complete the pre-flight. Heading over to the legs page, if we scroll down, you can see the route that you plan in the world map will have automatically pulled through. You can fix any discontinuities that appear by pasting the next waypoint into the gap where the discontinuity is and hit it and execute. So we now have a complete plan from runway to runway. Up on the autopilot panel, you'll find flight director and auto throttle are already armed. We'll activate LNAV, VNAV, dial in our desired cruising altitude, which is 26,000. And if you're curious, you can increase the range on your ND by using the dial shown here. A few more checks before we take off. Make sure auto brake is set to RTO. Make sure spoilers are not armed. So we'll want to set our stabilizer trim before takeoff, because you can see it's currently in white. We want that to be in green, so we'll pitch the stabilizer trim upwards until it's in green, ready for takeoff. For takeoff, parking brake off and throttles all the way up. The airplane will naturally start to pitch up around your rotate speed, so at that point just pull back on the yoke, bring the landing gear up as soon as you've got positive rate. Initially manually follow the flight director after takeoff. After 400 feet you can activate the autopilot, either using a hotkey or the button on the autopilot panel shown here. Retract the flaps as the airplane speed increases. You'll find at some points during your climb the airplane levels off. This is to obey an altitude restriction in the plan, but as soon as it's cleared that waypoint, it will accelerate again and resume its climb automatically. Above the transition altitude in the country you're flying in, you want to click the barometric pressure dial to set the pressure to standard. At top of climb, you'll see a VNAV path annunciator, and the airplane will level off. We can use the cruise phase of flight to sort out a few things for our descent and approach. First of all, we'll find our bottom of descent altitude. This is the altitude next to the final approach waypoint before the destination runway. It's usually labelled FF, then the runway number. So it's 2,400 feet at our destination. We'll dial in 2,000 into the autopilot panel here. The altitude you dial in should be equal to or lower than the altitude in the FMC. The airplane will of course maintain its cruise altitude until its top of descent, at which point it will start to descend to that bottom of descent altitude. We can also prepare our auto brake and arm the spoilers, just a bit of housekeeping so we're ready for approach. If we look a little further ahead, we can see our top of descent is marked on the navigation display. Additionally, in the FMC, as you get closer to your destination, if you've selected a runway in your flight plan, the ILS frequency and course should be automatically populated. If it isn't, it's no big deal. You can just dial it in manually. So that's frequency first, followed by /, and then the course of the runway, and hit the soft key next to ILS to populate it. At the top of descent waypoint, the airplane will automatically idle the throttle and pitch the nose down. You can use your descent as an opportunity to prepare more for your approach. So if you go to the initialize page, the approach ref will appear. Here you want to choose a landing speed and flap config, click the soft key next to your selected one, click the soft key next to flap speed to commit it. As we get closer to the destination, the airplane will want to decelerate. If you apply flaps, the airplane will continue to decelerate until you're at approach speed with full flaps. As you pass through transition altitude for the country you're flying in, don't forget to click that barometric pressure dial, then hit B to set local pressure. As the airplane turns on to final, hit the localizer button on the autopilot panel to arm the localizer mode. Once the airplane intercepts the localizer, you see the localizer annunciator, you can hit approach. After a short while, the airplane will then intercept the glide slope. By default, both autopilots will be armed for auto land. You can disable one or both of these if you desire. At landing, with the auto lands enabled, so both autopilots armed, the airplane will automatically flare and back off the throttle. For 787 it's really floaty, but it will eventually touch down at an idle throttle. Once it touches down, you can just apply the reversers, and the combination of reversers and auto brake will bring the airplane to a stop. You can roll off the reversers at 80 knots, return the throttle to idle. And that concludes our tutorial. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you found it useful. If you did, please drop a like, feel free to subscribe, take care, and I'll see you next time.